For this session, let me introduce the moderator. It is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Carol Beringen, Executive Director, International Government Affairs and Supply Chain at the Nuclear Energy Institute. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon and welcome back to this session. It's wonderful to be here with such a distinguished group of experts from government and industry to discuss nuclear energy and its role in meeting climate and energy goals. Our panelists today include Ivan Baldwin, the Business Development Director for Bechtel, Pierre Bechelany, the President for LNG and Power at Fluor, Margaret Cosentino, the Executive Vice President for Corporate Affairs at Bechtel, Teodor, Chirica, the President of the Board of Directors of Nuclearelectrica, the Honorable Bonnie Jenkins, the Undersecretary of State for Arms Control and International Security at the US State Department, and the Honorable Marisa Lago, the Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade at the US Department of Commerce. Please welcome our panelists. There are bios in the materials, so I won't go into detailed bios on each of the panelists, but instead let you read all about them and their wonderful backgrounds on the Atlantic Council site. Before beginning the panel, I was asked to give a brief summary of some discussions that were held earlier today between the industry from the US and from European nuclear countries that are part of P-TECC. It was a fascinating and far-ranging discussion that really drove home a couple of key points that we wanted to share with you today. The first, for policymakers, is the importance of continuity in policy in support of nuclear energy programs and projects. That was an overarching comment that the industry felt was very important to leave with policymakers. The second overarching comment that really spoke to both industry and government policymakers is the importance of sharing best practices and solutions across partners in P-TECC for nuclear energy. And this applies to so many areas of the discussion. The discussion itself focused on a number of key topics, one of them being the need for enhanced financing for nuclear projects, including things like increasing the nuclear expertise at financing entities, including export credit agencies, expanding access to public financing mechanisms, as well as including nuclear in green financing schemes. In addition, there was a good conversation around regulatory issues and the need for increased regulatory cooperation and efficiency among partner countries. In addition to cooperation, in addition to increasing efficiency, the group also identified the need for increasing training and opportunities for regulators to learn about the new technologies that are being deployed today. The group also discussed the importance of promoting supply chain development through a strategic approach to regional development of supply chains and the use of international codes and standards and qualification mechanisms. Finally, the group talked about the need for increased flexibility in the vendor selection process with things like intergovernmental agreements to speed and make more efficient the deployment of nuclear energy as we all strive to meet the tripling nuclear pledge that so many of our governments have championed. With that, I'd like to turn to this wonderful panel that we have here and build on the discussions that we've had here in this P-TECC forum on nuclear over the past several years. The first section of our discussion is really about moving from ambition to action. And I'd like to start this question off with a question for Undersecretary Jenkins. Ambassador Jenkins, we often talk about the costs and risks associated with nuclear projects. I wondered if you could talk a little bit with us today about the risks of not being successful, of not implementing nuclear projects on time and on budget, in terms of the impacts on energy security and the costs of decarbonization. Ambassador.
Great. Thank you for the question. It's really great to be here and to meet so many wonderful people. And this is an important topic, and I'm really happy to say a few words about it. I want to take a step back just very briefly and just look at what's really happening in the world today. And what you're seeing is really a renewed interest from a lot of countries in nuclear energy as a source of energy, of course, but also, as countries want to use nuclear energy as part of their process for options for dealing with climate change. And so what we're seeing is over 30 countries from emerging countries that are interested in things like small modular reactors. And this is very exciting, and I see it very much in my travels. When I travel around the world, I see the interest that countries have in nuclear energy as one of their sources for energy and to deal with climate change. At COP28 last year, there was a lot of interest in nuclear energy, probably the most ever at a COP meeting. There were agreements that were made, including the agreement by a number of countries to triple their use of nuclear energy by 2050. And so this also reflects the great interest in nuclear energy. We're also concerned about, on the other side, of ensuring that as we promote nuclear energy around the world and as countries develop the technologies and the know-how and expertise for nuclear energy, that they also take into account things such as the safety, security of nuclear energy, and also making sure that their nuclear energy and what they're doing is what we say is non-proliferation process. This is because there's a strong connection to nuclear energy and the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is a treaty that countries have agreed to either get rid of their nuclear weapons or not to develop nuclear weapons. And there's an important article in that treaty that says for peaceful uses, all countries can use nuclear energy for peaceful uses. And this is an area where we see countries really wanted to take advantage of nuclear energy, strengthening their obligations and their commitment to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And so this is a bigger issue, of course, than just nuclear energy for nuclear resources and climate change. It has a strong connection to other global security issues. And so we're promoting nuclear energy, we're promoting nuclear technology. We're very concerned about countries who are promoting their technology that's not safe, that's not secure, that's not proliferation resistant. So we have a strong interest, and I say in the US, work with many like-minded countries to make sure that this is done responsibly as well. We also know that when countries work with another country on nuclear technology, it establishes a relationship that lasts from 80 to 100 years. And so we want to keep that in people's mindset as they look at nuclear technology. We also recognize that if you don't have nuclear energy, there's a real loss of income that also accompanies that, because so many countries are interested in this and really do want this as part of their mix for dealing with climate change. So the basic answer to the question is, we have all this interest in nuclear technology to deal with climate change, just for energy purposes as well. There's a strong interest in making sure that countries that bring on nuclear technology make sure that it's safe, secure, and proliferation resistant, and that there's a lot of advantages that could be given and taken by this technology that won't happen if it doesn't happen. Okay, so that's the biggest answer. The other thing I would like to say is I did get an opportunity while I was here to visit Doicești, which is where Romania is going to be building this small modular reactor. And I could say from that visit that I had yesterday, it's a real testament to what countries can develop and what they can really do if they decide to go with nuclear technology as part of their climate change mix and part of their nuclear energy. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great way to start this conversation. And now I'd like to turn to Margaret Cosentino at Westinghouse. Margaret, Westinghouse has been very active across many of the P-TECC countries. Can you share a little bit with us about how you've seen plans for nuclear energy evolve over the past year and any learnings from your early work in countries like Poland, Bulgaria, Slovenia, or Ukraine?
Thank you, Carol. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, great. Thanks, Carol. So appreciate the opportunity to join this panel. It feels particularly timely given the heat here and also coming from Washington, D.C., where we just had our longest stretch of 100-degree days in 100 years. So we're definitely feeling the effects. For Westinghouse, though, in Europe in particular, we've seen the demand evolve quite rapidly over the past few years. And it started, I think, with the element of we want to diversify away from coal, we need carbon-free energy, and nuclear obviously bringing that capability. Then, layer on top of that, we had Russia's invasion in Ukraine, which put into sharp relief the need for the energy security piece. And nuclear also answering the mail on that, given that it can be an independent energy source getting off of natural gas and even Russian nuclear fuel supply chain. We've done quite a bit of work in that area too. And then what we're seeing even on top of that is the drive around AI, quantum computing, the hyperscalers, where the demand curve for clean energy really starts to go vertical. And we're seeing that in the US and I expect in Europe as well. So the environment has changed quite rapidly over the past few years. Now, from the Westinghouse perspective, we're really bringing an offering that is the best-in-class technology with our AP1000 and AP300 reactors, but bringing along with that alignment with the US government, who's doing quite a bit of work on intergovernmental agreements around licensing, workforce, training, financing, and other elements. And so the AP1000 is a great technology. It's the only globally deployed Gen 3 plus reactor. It's currently operating on 2 continents, setting performance records. It's a set design, which is key when you're talking about cost and schedule. And so when we're looking at deployment of this type of technology, this is critical infrastructure. These are 100-year partnerships when we deploy an AP1000 into another country. And so I think for countries who are interested in that best-in-class technology, plus the alignment with the US government around the elements that support that deployment, I think it becomes particularly compelling. I want to say a few words specifically about our project in Poland, where we're helping them, along with our friends from Bechtel and with our customer PEJ, to set up their new civil nuclear program. This is a project that enjoys considerable public support. I think the approval rating in Poland for this project is 90%, which is amazing. I can't imagine one thing that 90% of Americans would agree on. And I think really it's about the elements I discussed, but also the economic impact of this type of project for their supply chain, for their industry. And so PricewaterhouseCoopers did an independent assessment of the impact of this project earlier this year. Through the construction phase, it will be 120 billion zloty of economic impact, and then following on that for the operations, and these reactors will operate up to 80 years, if not longer, another 40 billion per year annually. It will reduce carbon emissions in Poland by 40%, and it will also provide opportunities regionally for the Polish supply chain to plug into other nuclear projects in Europe. So what we're seeing, we also have projects that we're kicking off in Ukraine and in Bulgaria. This becomes a very attractive model and I think solves a lot of problems that people have in terms of their energy mix, the carbon-free element, and the energy security piece.
Thanks, Margaret. Let's turn now to Romania. Mr. Chirica, if you can talk with us a little bit. We've heard such positive news recently, this past month, with the positive opinion of the European Commission on Units 3 and 4 at Cernavodă, and the recent IAEA mission for the Doicești site for SMR deployment. Can you share with us a little bit how you've moved these projects forward over the past year and what the next year may bring?
Thank you very much, and I'm very glad to be here. Unfortunately, I was a last-moment replacement, so I didn't structure very well my speech, but of course, based on my experience, I'm sure that I can handle. So you mentioned opinion. that we received from the European Commission. That opinion is a document which is contemplated by the Euratom Treaty. It's in Article 41. For all nuclear projects over the European Union, they have to receive a notification from the member state where the project is implemented, and after that they are delivering their opinion. Here is sometimes is a confusion that is a positive or negative. There is not in the law, in the text is not mentioned that this qualification is positive or negative. But as the wording is structured, it's quite obvious if it's positive or not. In our case, the opinion is positive, and the opinion is opening the door for the financing, for the partnership, because that it is a very important document. Practically, of course, that before they received that opinion, we didn't stay waiting, and we progressed with some activities, and now we are in the situation to go to conclude the EPC contract, and meanwhile to set up the financing round. That is a lesson that I learned from a long time ago. When you go to the banks, you have to put in front of them a contract. So that is, but preparatory stages are continuing. Regarding the IEA mission in Doicești, they did an evaluation of the site, so practically the site is accepted by the IEA, but of course they also provide us the next steps to develop, because up to the site license is still, there is some time. So now there is a lot of Romanian contractors, and where is the case we are importing consultants. We are now developing the evaluation, the seismical, the environmental impact, and the geological. In my opinion, maybe the Romanians, they are aware about the biggest earthquake for this century in '77. And at that time, I was one of the young engineer in an engineering company, and the Doicești plant, the conventional plant, didn't suffer any damage. So that for me is a certitude that this site is appropriate from seismical point of view. Really speaking, that what I want to add to that, there are some discussions in international and sometimes in national regarding the modular reactors, and I fully trust in those reactors. And I remember the Oliver Stone movie, and that is a moment when Admiral Rickover is on a submarine. And remembering that first reactor was a cooperation of the Navy with Westinghouse. I'm wrong? Mm-hmm. And after that, Westinghouse, after a couple of years, they built shipping point. No, not shipping point. It's shipping point, which is a unit with 60 megawatts, which operated 30 years up to the commissioning with no major incidents. Okay, regular incidents happened anywhere. That is what I can. Did I answer to your question?
Yes, you did, very, very much so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
And that's a great segue into our next part of the conversation around innovation and deployment. And I'd like to turn my next question to Undersecretary Lago. With the innovative technologies coming to market, where do you see opportunities for SMRs to fit into country energy strategies? And how is the U.S. government, and in particular the Department of Commerce, working to expand partnerships?
Thanks for the question, Carol. It's no secret that the U.S. government strongly believes that SMRs and advanced reactors have a key role to play in countries' energy strategies. And I think it's appropriate that we're here among P-TECC countries because they are countries that have been some of the most forward-leaning. Now, the U.S. government is putting money behind this conviction. The U.S. Department of Energy's Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program recently received an additional $2.6 billion from our bipartisan infrastructure law. And this money is going to support the design, the licensing, the construction, and operation of two advanced reactor technologies, the TerraPower Natrium and the X-Energy XE100 reactors. It's important as we do this that we do it in partnership. That is such an important word whenever we talk about the nuclear industry, and it is the partnership among countries. I would highlight in that vein the fact that the U.S. Department of Energy is working with the European Commission to organize a second high-level US-EU SMR forum, and this will build on the successful first forum, which occurred in 2019. Turning specifically to the department that I represent, the Department of Commerce, back in 2020, we launched the SMR public-private program, and the focus of it was to promote transatlantic cooperation to develop and deploy SMRs, and to echo what Undersecretary Jenkins had said, to develop them under the highest standards of safety, security, and non-proliferation. What's interesting about this program is that we launched it even in advance of SMRs being commercially available. We realized that we would benefit from working with partner nations, with industry, to prepare the regulatory environment, to prepare the business environment, so that countries would be able to take advantage of this technology as soon as it was commercially available. We initially focused our SMR PPP, public-private program, in Europe and Eurasia, and thanks to yet another U.S. government agency, our Trade and Development Agency, we've been able to organize a series of 5 different SMR regulatory and standards workshops, and they bring together hundreds of experts across government, but importantly, another partnership across industry as well. And they are brainstorming sessions about how to overcome challenges to SMR deployment. And I will note that we are so bullish on this SMR PPP that we have recently hired an expert in Brussels who is going to be focused exclusively on helping develop partnerships with European countries and U.S. industry to make progress on SMR projects in the region.
Thank you. And that theme of partnership that you mentioned is so important. Mr. Bechelany, let me turn to you next. And if you could talk to us a little bit about a key to the successful nuclear energy deployment really is these strong partnerships between technology vendors, between the EPCs, the supply chain. How is Fluor thinking about building these partnerships to really support the deployment of nuclear energy in P-TECC countries? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Thanks, Carol. Pierre Bechelany with Fluor. First of all, we start by aligning with the client on the scope of work and the expectations. We build a strong relationship from the get-go so we can have a successful project. Secondly, we'll go and talk to our licensors. As you know, NuScale is a company that Fluor developed over the years. We developed the technology for the SMR. Even though we spin off the company a few years ago, we still own 57% of the company, and we have good alignment with the NuScale team on the technology and the division of responsibility between our companies. It's a very key to get the technology to understand how we're going to work with them from the beginning of the project. Thirdly, we will go and look for engineers. Definitely, Fluor has worked over the years in building several nuclear plants, but for the past few years, we have not built one. And what we are doing right now, we are doing some work with the US government where we have still over 1,000 engineers working on various decommissioning projects. So we are bringing back those people to help us rebuild the commercial section of the nuclear business. We are still recruiting new graduates. We're trying to attract people to come back to nuclear engineering so we can rebuild the resources that we need in the next decade if we need to tackle this big shortage of talent in the industry. In addition, what we are looking at, what can we do for the supply chain, how we can develop the supply chain specifically for the long lead equipment. We need help globally, not a single country, and we heard this today from another panel. Not one country can supply all what we need, maybe except China and India, but for us, or Korea, I'll say. But we still need the entire global supply chain to help build what we need for those mega projects. We need also to help those suppliers get qualified or pre-qualified under the safety and quality programs that we have put in place. And we can help also the local contractors to be pre-qualified. Here in Romania, we will have a local office where we're going to pre-qualify and help the local contractors to get ready for construction. When it comes to the construction, we really need to find more contractors than we need in order to get the job done on time. We will have several contractors, maybe they're not all Romanians, but also we need to qualify the local contractors and make sure they register with us early on during the FEED design so we can get to know them, build the relationships, and try to understand their capabilities. And at the end, we need to supplement also their capabilities and help them grow. We're going to put a training program in place in country for the craft to be able to gain experience so we can let them enter the industry. We heard that those jobs will require 10,000 craft at least to build, so we really need to get ready and have all what we need. Early planning, that's what we're going to be doing in the FEED to make sure we connect all the dots and make sure we have, as we hear all the time, we have cost overruns on nuclear projects. We need to make sure we have the cost and schedule certainty early on those projects. So definitely it's a big challenge, but we have done it in the past, and looking forward to working with the Romanian government and the client also on the permitting process to make sure we have all what we need on time so we can start construction and meet the schedule needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre. Ivan, I'm going to turn to you next. And I'm going to put a little twist on the question that I had planned for you. The first piece, I know. The first piece is I would like for you to talk a little bit about the importance of the role of the EPC in a nuclear project. I think that's something, we talk a lot about the technology, but the engineering procurement contractor is also a very important role. If you could speak to that a little bit. And then the other piece I wondered if you could talk to a little bit is, Bechtel has been building partnerships for nuclear construction for a very long time and has experience in the U.S. with the recent completion of the Vogtle project, the initiation of work in Wyoming with TerraPower. I wondered if you could share a little bit about your approach to building partnerships and specifically localization for supply chain and workforce.
Thank you, Carol. And forgive me, everybody, I can't use this as a fan anymore, so I'm probably just going to pour out, but, It is what it is. Aside from that, it is great to be here, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Just to briefly introduce Bechtel to folks in the room if you've not heard of us. We're a privately owned, family-led company. So we're on our 5th generation of the Bechtel family leading the organization. We've been around for over 125 years. During that time, or certainly over the last 70 years, we've delivered over 150 nuclear power projects around the world, and that adds up to over 76 gigawatts of nuclear power. During that time, or certainly in the last 10 years, let's just focus on the last 10 years, we've engaged over 20,000 craft professionals, so people on site delivering nuclear projects. So we've delivered the last 2 nuclear power projects in the United States, the last being with our friends at Westinghouse on Vogtle 3 and 4. And actually, spend with the supply chain, just wanted to sort of draw that out. On an annual basis, we spend $16 billion with our supply chain partners. So that sort of supply chain piece that you mentioned before is really important. Just to draw on the new question that you're giving me, Carol, as I'm thinking on my feet a little bit about the importance of EPC. The EPC is an incredibly important part of it, and we've heard a little bit about the approach that Pierre spoke about earlier. These are mega projects. Nuclear projects are mega projects. So what does that mean? You know, it means safety critical. It means, you know, huge in scale. It means huge in terms of the money involved, the numbers of people involved on the project, the longevity. You know, some of these projects can sort of last, you know, up to sort of 10 years in execution. So, you know, these are really big. And having a company who sits in the middle of all that, from an integration point of view, and also from a construction point of view, is incredibly important. I'll mention a couple of points, you know, sort of to that effect to bring that to life. Margaret earlier mentioned the project in Poland that we're working on together to deploy the AP1000. And, you know, one of the first things that you really need to think about there is safety. You know, safety for all involved is absolutely paramount. And for the engineer and constructor, incredibly important. So how does that integration take place to ensure that you have a, you know, one nuclear safety culture? Everybody's thinking about safety and everything that they're doing. So that's one of the key roles of the nuclear EPC. And if I could just refer back to Vogtle that I mentioned earlier, as a team, we managed to achieve 72 million people hours without a lost time accident, which is phenomenal when you consider the challenge of the project that those folks faced. The other remark I'd like to make is, especially looking forward, these new nuclear projects now can take advantage of all of the technologies and experience that the EPC companies use in other sectors. So what I'm thinking about here is digital project execution. And you can take that digital execution right from design through to commissioning. And that's something that we're doing now on all of our new nuclear projects. You mentioned the Natrium project with TerraPower and the project in Poland with Westinghouse. You know, an opportunity there to go, you know, full digital on those projects. And, you know, imagine the scenario where you've got, you know, hundreds of people, thousands of people working on a site, and these folks have digital handheld devices, and they're using those in the execution of the project. Takes away a lot of the burden of paperwork, and also removes some of the, you know, potential chances that there might have been for problems and rework, etc. So we're really excited about the use of those digital technologies. So you asked me to talk about the local piece as well, and, you know, I mentioned before that these nuclear projects take a long time, and these nuclear projects are in other people's backyards, and we think about social license. How do we ensure that we have the right relationship in that area to ensure that we can have a successful project And also we can have access to the right talent, the right skills, the right supply chain, and also understanding the local regulatory environment as well. So that local knowledge is absolutely crucial. So again, if I take Poland as an example, one of the first things that we did there was to engage a Polish leadership team and open a Polish office. And we'll upskill and train and bring in as many local people and as much local talent as we possibly can there. Why? Because it makes sense, it makes commercial sense, makes sense for the project. One of the other things that we're doing there as well is educational partnerships. We're proud that we've just kicked a partnership very recently with Gdansk University, and that's going to be really key as we look to build out that pipeline of talent that we need for the project moving forward. I'd like as well just to touch very quickly on the leadership piece, which is something for us at Bechtel that is really close to our hearts. You know, we may be an American-owned company, but we're a global company, and therefore, in the markets in which we serve, we look to have local leadership in those markets. And if I take where I'm from, you probably may have guessed from the dodgy accent, I'm from the UK. Bechtel's been operating there for over 70 years, and a significant number of the leadership population across Bechtel now are actually Brits. And we want to see that in our other markets, and we are seeing our other markets such as Australia and India, and then you know, we intend to make sure that Poland follows suit and that other countries in Europe that we work in follow suit as well. The last comment I'd like to make, if I may, is about partnerships. And I think that, and by partnerships, I mean with organizations who facilitation organizations that we really need to work with that can get behind us. One particular example would be women in nuclear. So we talk again and again about the skills challenge that we face in nuclear, the fact that we don't have enough skilled people to deliver the jobs, but typically we're only looking at half of the population. And the opportunity that we have working with women in nuclear is to really start to build out those relationships, build out our connection, and make life a bit easier for ourselves in bringing the talent in that we need to deliver these projects. Thank you.
Thanks, Ivan. I'd like to build on that concept of workforce development. It was such a lively conversation during the Business Forum Roundtable just this morning, and really throw it open to the rest of our panelists to really share with us your views on how we can ensure that the nuclear sector has the necessary workforce for all of the ambitious plans across this region and at home in the US when you think about the amount of build we're planning at home. What are the industry's needs for skilled professionals, and what strategies have each of you seen implemented or have under development to attract the next generation of workers for this industry? Bonnie, can I go to you first?
Thank you for the question. Workforce development is so fundamental because, as we look at this new, what I call this new nuclear renaissance, there's a strong desire, as I said earlier, for nuclear technology, for energy, and for climate change, sustainability issues. But you, of course, need the people to actually do the work. And as I said, and as you've heard from others, we're talking 80 to 100 years in the future where you're having these relationships with countries, but you also have to have the people on the ground who are involved in all aspects of the process, not just the engineers, but everyone who has to put it together. And as I said, I was at the Dorchester site yesterday, and they talked about how they're working with the community, which is fundamental, and you just heard about the importance of that. They work with universities to bring more students into nuclear issues, but it's also the people that have to build the site. I mean, you need people to do all of it. One specific thing I know that we've been doing at the State Department is working with countries who are interested in nuclear technology who don't yet have a lot of the expertise in some of these issues. So we're, you know, as you heard already from others, we're working with countries to help build some of that expertise. One of the things that we have is something called the FIRST program. It's the foundational infrastructure for the responsible use of small modular reactor technology. And this is a program that state has initiated to really help work with countries to help train to get ready for what's needed to bring on this nuclear technology. It's an opportunity to train, but also develop strong relationships with these countries as we're doing this. We have over 40 countries who we're working with, and these countries are from Sub-Saharan Africa, Central Southeast Asia, Latin America, Eastern and Central Europe, including Romania. And we also have 17 countries who are actually on the waiting list to do this with us. So we have also targeted first to support workforce development in other ways. We have an E2 center here at the University Polytechnica, and it's allowed for hands-on training in order to help get ready for what needed for nuclear engineering. We're also helping with some SMR-related curriculum development. We're doing that here, but also doing it in countries like Ghana. So, you know, there's a lot that has to go into all of this. We talk a lot about the importance of this, but we also recognize that you need a workforce development. You need young people, you need students, you need future generations. And so that automatically is part of the mix as well.
Thanks. Yes, Undersecretary Lago.
If I could just build on that. In the U.S., when you think of workforce development, one understandably thinks of the Department of Education and the Department of Labor, which is appropriate. But Secretary of Commerce Raimondo realized that there was a gap there, which is what is it that the businesses need? And so she has been extremely engaged and has had the department engaged in reaching out to industry to understand what are the needs that they have. We also realized that we needed to look at effective systems in other countries. In particular, we looked at Germany, at Austria, at Switzerland, which have long had this dual-track system of having high school students continue with formal education, but also very detailed on-the-job training that leads to certifications or licenses that someone can take with them throughout their career. And we increasingly are partnering with community colleges, recognizing that many of the well-paying jobs in the nuclear industry, in other industries, don't require necessarily the 4-year and graduate degrees that many of us on this stage may have, but do require training in advanced manufacturing. And so we are very bullish on the partnership among industry, community colleges, and government.
Thank you. You know, I'm thinking about both of your answers, the importance of engaging industry in terms of workforce development, recent activities, including the E2 Center here in Bucharest. Teodor, if I can turn to you and ask you a little bit about your approach here in Romania for workforce development. No, Teodor.
I'm in a point of interference. Sorry.
Workforce development here in Romania. Sure. Thank you. We apologize. The echo is very bad up here on the stage.
I noticed that I'm in the sort of interference point, and it's very difficult for me to understand what our dear colleague is saying. So, of course, that there is a preoccupation of training the workforce for example, at the level of universities. Now it was created this year an alliance of 12 universities. They are spread on all the territory of Romania, and is including also the police academy there, and we understand the reasons. And now they are starting, how to say, an unified program to select and to train people. Of course, in my generation, in the Polytechnical University of Bucharest, for example, it was a special section for nuclear engineers. But at the end of the day, we didn't need in a plant only nuclear engineers or energy engineers. We need also IT guys. We need constructors. We need fabrication. So that is we have. In the company, we have a program of selecting talents, and we offer support for them, and after that, with the promise of a job. So that is something that we try to sort it. Generally speaking, and this is not a secret that almost all over the world, there is an issue regarding the workforce, the qualified workforce. So now, also the purpose of this alliance I mentioned before is just to unify the efforts in order to increase the number of people desire to work in the nuclear industry.
Thank you. Margaret, I see you want to add on.
Yeah, if I could add to this, this is a very important topic. Go back to the project in Poland. That's going to create 10,000 jobs just through the construction phase of the project, which is great, and we love to create jobs. And these are good jobs in engineering, construction, manufacturing, procurement, cybersecurity, highly skilled, good jobs. But on the flip side, we have to fill those jobs. And that's going to take concerted effort. It's going to take multiple layers of programs, both at the company-to-company level and the government level, to get it done. And so I applaud what the U.S. government is doing. And one of the benefits of the intergovernmental agreement that governs the Poland project between the U.S. and Poland is it does create this regional training center that's based in Warsaw. It was just opened this spring, which is going to develop competencies, add capability, and help drive a lot of the linkages on the skills and workforce for this project, but also for regional opportunities. The other thing from the company perspective that Westinghouse is doing is we have created partnerships with local Polish universities, technical colleges, and we created an internship program. We're now on our third year of doing this, where we have interns come embed in Westinghouse for the summer. They spend time at our headquarters in Cranberry, where they train with that's where the center of training is, with our AP1000 control room simulator. They spend time at our field fabrication facility in South Carolina as well. And when they go back, then all of them have been offered jobs on the project. So that's another element of a pipeline at the company level to really drive that competency and create the opportunity and fill those jobs, which is going to be a big need.
Thanks, Margaret. Pierre, do you want to add?
Yeah, if I can add one thing here. We need to attract young talent to the industry if we're going to sustain all this workload. The only way is to show them that nuclear is part of the energy transition. We see many young talent these days, they don't want to work on an oil and gas project. They say, no, this is not the future. I want to be green. We're trying to demonstrate that nuclear is a green energy, and this is the future. So we're bringing in internship, we're giving internship across the company, across the globe, trying to attract people through their career, also before they enter the workforce, and trying to make sure we provide the training, and hopefully when they finish their 4-year degree, they are ready to start working on the next nuclear project. So it's paying dividend for us. Our HR has put some policies in place to go to colleges and try to recruit and make sure we bring the talent for the future.
Thank you. Ivan, do you want to add on, or?
Yeah, I guess the only topic I think that I'd like to add is, so in Bechtel we have 5 different business lines, and they're all focused on major and mega project delivery. And one thing that we are really focused on doing right now to try and deliver against the challenge that Margaret and others have talked about is upskilling people from other sectors. You know, these are mega projects, the nuclear projects. Okay, so some people need to be highly nuclear skilled, but there are other disciplines, and if you take project management is a great example of that. If you're a project manager that delivered a mega project in oil and gas, you could well be a project manager that could deliver a project in nuclear. So one thing that we're doing internally is we have our own nuclear development course, if you would, that we're taking folks from other sectors into that, because some of those jobs won't be there in the future in those industries, so we need to make sure that we're transitioning the people over.
Thank you. This has been a great conversation, and I really appreciate all of the time and expertise that our panel has given us here. Before we wrap up, I do want to spend a minute just giving each of the panelists an opportunity for a last word or thought that they'd like to contribute to this conversation that you didn't have a chance, or a question didn't quite come up that let you add that to the dialogue. May I start with you, Ambassador?
I guess my final words would be, you know, this is an exciting time because we're seeing, as I've said twice before, this new increased interest in nuclear energy as a way to, of course, provide energy for countries, but also as part of a climate change mix. So, you know, it's really exciting. There's such an interest around the world from many countries in small modular reactors, in ways in which we can, you know, that we can use nuclear energy as one resource. Of course, as I said earlier, we just need to make sure we do it responsibly, and that countries are always considering the safety, security, and non-proliferation aspects of the work that they do and the engagement. But it's a great time, and I know for the U.S. we look forward to working with many countries. Of course, working with industry, because we can't do this without industry, and engaging everyone on this issue. I also want to make sure that we highlight some of the things you've heard about the advantages, not just of nuclear energy and climate change, sustainability aspects, but things like workforce development that we talked about, and you know, jobs that are created, and education aspect of it, the next generation aspect. These are also really important benefits. There's challenges in terms of addressing workforce, but like everything else, we have to look at it as something that we just part of the process, but some of the advantages that come with it. The only other thing I'll say is, you know, understanding why, you know, so many of us are in the situation that we're in terms of, you know, Russia's invading Ukraine and creating a real recognition that countries need to be more independent in terms of their resources, the need to make sure that they can not have to depend on Russia for resources. I know in the U.S. we're also working on that. We have quite a bit of funding to also ensure that we are not reliant on them as well. And so this is an effort that is a partnership. We have to work with countries to do this. And we welcome all the partnerships that we're developing around the world, including the great one we have with Romania right now. And we want to keep working with all countries on this, because we really need to make sure that we have the best, most safe, most secure, proliferation-resistant technology that's out there. So thank you.
Thank you. Teodor, do you have some last thoughts you'd like to share? Would you like to share any last thoughts?
However, thank you once again for inviting me here. I am very glad that I have the opportunity to meet very important people from United States, but also from European countries, and also I met also some people which I met them a long time ago. That is very important for me. Of course, that we are fully determined to continue and to go on the nuclear way. And we really believe that nuclear is bringing security, is bringing prosperity, and is bringing education. So that is very important because education is one of the topics that we tackle with it. So that's it. So,
Thank you. Undersecretary Lago?
I think it's important that we realize the magical moment that we're in. Earlier today, Secretary Granholm pointed out that we're 26 years out from our 2050 pledge. But interestingly, she looked back 26 years to see how much we had accomplished. 26 years ago, we weren't using artificial intelligence. 26 years ago, people wouldn't have understood the term quantum computing, and we weren't walking around with powerful computers in the size of a small phone. And so I think our charge should be to continue innovating. We know that we're focused on the cutting edge technologies of today, but it is so important that governments and industry continue to have this cooperation because it is industry that will be innovating, it is industry that will be providing the financing, and it is government that will be making sure that we have the boundaries in place so that these innovations benefit our populations.
Thank you. Margaret?
So we're at an inflection point. There's a lot of promise around nuclear and a lot of eagerness. And I think the question of can it deliver is sort of hanging out there. And what I would say to that is we do well what we do often. And it is demonstrated and proven that if you do serial construction, manufacturing of the same design over and over, you can drive down the cost curve and you can hit your schedule. And so for us at Westinghouse, looking at the P-TECC region in particular, we already have 3 countries that are moving out and deploying AP1000 technology. We also have our small modular reactor in AP300, which is just a small version of the AP1000, same design, same components, same licensing heritage. And so we're at a point where we're starting to see the framework of a real APX fleet in Europe that really leverages that serial manufacturing and construction opportunities. So for other countries who are interested in, this really creates a very optimized environment to deliver on that promise of nuclear.
Thank you. Pierre, last thought?
Yes, my closing remarks are for Romanian and for all our friends in Romania. You took the bold decision to deploy the first SMR in Europe. You have the experience, I would say, based on what you have done on conventional power, and you have the opportunity to become a regional hub for Europe and to supply energy beyond your borders. So a great opportunity for the country. The second point I would like to make is be first movers and continue to push the projects that you have in right now. The reason is you can secure the resources you need, including the supply chain, including the craft and the resources that you need, before it becomes a very tight market where you will not be able to find the craft you need and you will not be able to find the expertise you need and the equipment to bring certainty to the cost and schedule. I think Romania is in a great spot to create jobs and to continue to grow the economy. And at the end of the day, become a major player in the SMR technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. Last word.
Thank you for that. So one of the things that I've been learning over the past couple of days whilst being here and being at this conference is, you know, nuclear is a value game. It's not a cost game. So I've heard from people talking about if you were to choose a technology to build today that was the cheapest, you wouldn't build nuclear based on the cheapest technology to build. But the value that it brings, how long-term the asset is, the job that it creates, what it brings to the local economy, etc. You know, nuclear blows every other technology out of the game, if you'll forgive that pun. So I think, you know, it's incumbent on all of us involved in nuclear to be continually talking about the value that it brings, talk about the value that we bring in every part of the nuclear life cycle, whether it be in construction or in operation, or any of the supporting supply chains. So that's what I'd like to say, Carol. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise here today. I really would like to thank our wonderful panel. Please give them a big hand. And I'd also like to thank the US Department of Energy, the Romanian Ministry of Energy, the P-TECC team, the Atlantic Council, and ACEBA for having us here today and for their support in making this event possible. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of P-TECC.